Hi everyone, I am Sreekanth. We are discussing programming in C language. The topic is about basics of C programming language. Today's agenda of this session is about simple C programs examples, execution flow of C program. Coming to the simple C programs example 1 and example 2, we try to discuss in detail. The coming to the example 1. Here first we need to save the application. First we need to open the application and save the application with extension .c, file name .c. Here I given a meaningful name hello.c. The first section indicates documentation section. The documentation section can be written in C language in two ways. One is called single line command. This is slash forward slash indicates what? Single line command. Here I given the name hello world. It indicates this program become what? Hello world program. The second step indicates like a header information. Here this symbol indicates what? Like a preprocessor directive. Hash indicates what? Preprocessor directive. Include is a keyword, the content of the external file into the program. It includes what? The contents of the external file into the program. So which content it going to be includes? Some standard library information. Here I written stdio.h file, the standard header file that provides input output functions like printf function, which display information on the screen, like formatted input function, formatted output function we had discussed in the previous video session, like scanf function and printf function we are using at present with the help of what? stdio.h header file including to our program. The next step, main function. Here int represents what? Return type. It indicates an integral value or integer value is returned to the operating system from main function. Main function is going to be returning some integer value to the operating system. Main is the name of the function. Main function is an entry point for what? C programming language. Next, it indicates what? Nothing is passed to what? Main function. Void is a keyword. Void is a empty type. It does not returns any value, and it void is nothing but what? Empty. It does not consist any value. Here simply you can remember nothing is passed to what? Main function. We are not passing any parameters to the main function. Okay, and set of statement we are writing within the curly braces. This is about start of the function, and this symbol curly braces indicates what? End of the main function. So this symbol indicates what? Start of the main function. This symbol indicates what? End of the main function. And another important point, here I written what? Printf function. Printf is a formatted output function available in what? stdio.h header file. Here I wrote simple output message hello world enclosed with what? Double quotes. Okay, and return 0. This return 0 return the value 0 to the operating system or operating environment to indicate that the program terminated normally. Always remember, if you're returning 0, it means what? It indicates the program is terminated normally. A non-zero value would indicate an abnormal return, which means in other words, like things were not as they should be when the program is ended. Always remember, return 0 indicates what? Normal termination. This main function returning this integer value to the operating system. See, this is the simple, very simple example. Just I'm printing here hello world, one hello world message to the output to screen using what? C programming language. Example 1 indicates. Coming to the example 2, it is similarly same. I'm writing the file name with extension .c. Here I written the file name is demo.c. You can give any meaningful name like test.c or example1.c or program1.c, like that. Okay, the first section, document section, I wrote here with the command line, single line commands. I wrote here welcome demo. It indicates this program displays welcome information. Second, linking section like header information. This header information consists what? Hash include, like preprocessor include is a keyword. We are including stdio.h header file, standard input output header file. It consists several input and output function. I am using at present printf function in my program. Okay. Next, the return type here I wrote void. Void is an empty return type. It does not returns any value. It does not hold any value. Void is nothing but empty type. In the previous example, I wrote integral type. For the sake, I written explicitly 0. It indicates what? Normal termination. This value main function is returning for our program to what? Operating system. But I am not returning any value. Why? Because by default return type in main function is what? Void in a C programming language. Okay. Next, here open and closed flower braces. Within the braces only I am writing set of statement. Here I wrote the two output message with the help of printf function. Printf is the output function available in stdio.h header file. In the printf function, I wrote one simple message. Hi Srikanth, welcome to C programming language. I wrote another message with the help of again printf function like thank you Sri. So observe, in the previous example, I passed some void keyword within the main function parameter, but it indicates what? Like empty. The both are same. Here I'm not passed anything. If you return void also, both indicate same. Void is nothing but what? Empty. Void is nothing but empty type. Here also I'm not written anything, but we can also pass some command line arguments. In the next coming sessions we try to discuss in detail about that command line arguments. Remember here, return 0. See, this statement indicates that the value written by the main function after the program instruction in its body or executed to the operating system is 0. See, always remember, if the 0 value is going to be returning, it is a normal termination. If it is a non-zero value, would indicates what? An abnormal return. Okay, like abnormal termination. Some program is going to be forcibly terminated. Okay, that's it. So this is very simple examples. In the next video session we try to discuss how to execute this program in the editor, C Turbo C editor. Okay, the next topic is about compilation and execution process in C. See, once we return the program, then how it going to be compiling and how it going to be executing. It indicates what? Compilation of the program and execution of the program in the C language. The first step, source code. Here, whatever the code we return with the file name called hello.c or demo.c and so on. So this indicates what? Entire code indicates source code. Here, how the instructions are wrote? The instructions are going to be written in the form of what? High level language like general English with the help of what? ASCII standards. Okay. Here, that source code, assume I save the application with the name called what? Hello.c. Okay. The first program, I save the name with the extension is called hello.c. This is called C program. It indicates what? Source code. See, once we return the source code, but that source code consists what? High level instruction. Machine cannot understood high level instruction. Then machine always understands what? Machine understandable instructions called binary level language or machine code or byte code or object code, like that. Okay. Then here the next step indicates like pre-processing. It is the first phase of C compilation. After writing the source code, then you start for compiling and execution of the program. Pre-processing, it is a first phase of C compilation. It processes include files, conditional compilation instructions and macros. The C processor, the C preprocessor is used to modify the program according to the preprocessor directives in the source code. A preprocessor directive is a statement like such as hash define macros, like symbolical constant representation I explained in the previous video session, like hash define, that gives the preprocessor specific instructions on how to modify the source code. The preprocessor is invoked as the first part of the compiler program's compilation step. It is usually hidden from the programmer because it is done automatically by the compiler. The first phase of the compilation step is what? Preprocessor. Once it going to be pre-processing the source code and generating what? Expanded source code. Observe. Here I wrote hello.c with example like C program. Preprocessor is going to be pre-processing. That the source code is going to be converted into what? Expanded source code. Then it internally it going to be generated with extension what? Hello.i with extension what? Hello.i. We are saved the application with extension hello.c. Preprocessor is converted that source code into what? Expanded source code with extension hello.i. So once expanded source code is going to be generated, then next step involves what? Compilation. See, compiler is responsible in this phase. This is called second step of the compiling process. It takes the output of the preprocessor and that source code like expanded source code and generates assembler source code. The compiler examines each program statement contained in the source program and checks it to ensure that it conforms to the syntax and the semantics of the language. If mistakes are discovered by the compiler during this phase, they are reported to the user. The errors then have to be corrected in the source program with the use of an what? Within an editor, and the program has to be recompiled. Until unless compilation error free, we must recorrect the code. So once compilation free, then only it's going to be generate what? Assembly code. Who is the responsible to generate assembly code? Compiler. Compiler takes input as a expanded code. After loading that, it's going to be checks the syntax and semantics of the particular programming language like C language. If it is compilation error free, then only it's going to be translate. Compiler is a language translator. It translate this high level instruction code into what? Assembly code. Observe here. The compiler is responsible to load expanded source code and converting this instruction into what? Assembly code. When it going to be converts? When compilation error is going to be free, then only it's going to be convert this expanded source code into what? Assembly code. Then it's going to be generate with extension what? File extension with what? .s. File name .s. Example like hello.s is going to be generated. See, once assembly code is generated, who understands this assembly code? The second generations of computer we had discussed, right? Assembler. See, assembly is the third stage of what? Compilation step. It takes the assembly source code and produces an assembly listening with what? Offsets. The assembler output is stored in an object file. After the program has been translated it an equivalent assembly language program. See, next in the compilation process is to translate the assembly language statement into what? Actual machine instructions. Observe, assembler. What is the job of assembler here? Assembler is also a language translator. Assembler takes an input as a assembly code. This assembler is converting what? This assembly code, intermediary code into what? Like machine understandable code. That code is called object code. Always remember, source code is understood by the user or programmer, but this object code is understood by what? Machine. Machine is going to be understood as what? Object code. Machine cannot understand directly a source code. Here assembler is responsible to convert what? Assembly code into what? Object code. Example, right? Assembly code with extension hello.s. Assembler is a language translator, internally translates this assembly code into what? Loads assembly code and it translates into what? Object code. That file is called hello.obj file. It generates .obj file. Always remember, this object code is nothing but machine understandable code. Here I want to tell one point here. C is machine independent but platform dependent. Why? Because assembler is responsible to generate this assembly code into what? Object code. We had discussed in detail in the previous video session about assembly language, about the functionality of assembler. So if we go with the assembly language, that is comes under what? Second generation programming language, right? Second generation language. What it means? Assembly is a machine independent or dependent? machine dependent. Why? Because this assembly is going to be depend upon particular operating system instructions, hardware instruction, that the code cannot take and cannot run in the different operating systems. For that sake, C language is what? Platform dependent. But C is a machine independent. We can write once that source code, you can carry this source code, and you can process this compilation and execution in the different operating system. But C is a platform dependent. Why? Because you cannot carry this object code, cannot run directly in the different platform operating systems. Why? Because this object code is generated by assembler. This assembler is going to be what? Machine dependent instructions are going to be generated. Due to that reason, this object code you cannot carry and you cannot run this object code into the different operating systems. Very important point for what? Exam or interviews. Okay. After generating object code, who provides runtime environment here? Linker. See, linker is responsible to what? Load this object code. Remember another important point. See, the assembler takes each assembly language statement and converts into binary format known as what? Object code. See, which is then written into what? Another file on the system. Okay. Like if you go with the last letter is what? With extension what? Obj. From C extensions, the previous extension to what? Dot obj file is going to be generated. Just only we discussed. Fine. Next, linker is responsible to what? Load this object code, machine understandable code. It is the final stage of what? Compilation. After the program has been translated into what? Object code, it is ready to the linked. The purpose of linking phase is to get the program into a final form for execution on the computer. The function or the part of the standard C library provides by every C compiler. The program may use other source programs that were previously processed by the compiler. Okay, simply remember, the process of compiling and linking a program is often called building. What we can call it is building. The final linked file, which is generated an executable object code format, is stored in another file on the system ready to be run or executed. So linker is responsible to linking some other object files and inbuilt C standard library files, and it going to be provides what? Runtime environment. After that, linker is going to be responsible to load this object code and generating what? Executable code. It's going to be generate what? Executable code. So observe here, the linker is responsible to load this object code and it's going to be generate what? Executable code. Once this executable code is generated, like hello.exe, the loader is responsible to load this executable code, and it going to be provides what? Runtime execution. Okay, so what is the job of this loader? As we discussed in the previous video session, this executable code is going to be stored where? In the secondary storage. Generally, it's going to be secondary storage devices, like in the form of a hard disk, generally in the storage area. Okay, this executable code is going to be stored in what? One storage area. Generally, where it going to be stored? It's going to be stored in the secondary storage area. Okay, this executable code is going to be stored in secondary storage area. See, the program is stored in the secondary storage such as hard disk as an executable image. So once the loader is find that executable code, this stage is active while running or executing the program. It's going to be generate what? Execution process. It carries this source executable code from the secondary hard disk to what? Main memory. Okay, and providing what? Execution. Then we make a result of the particular program. See, this is the steps involved for what? Compilation and execution process in C, like source code, preprocessor generates expanded code, compiler loads that expanded code, generate assembly code, assembler loads that assembly code and generates object code, linker is going to be linking several object files, C standard libraries, and loading that object code. If anything went errors here, it's going to be generate runtime errors. Otherwise, error is free. It's going to be generate what? Executable code. Loader is responsible to load that executable code from what? Secondary storage devices to what? Main memory, and provides what? Execution. See, this is the steps generally involved for compilation and execution flow of what? C programming language. Okay, see here you need to remember some more points like errors, right? See, we discussed about what is bug, what is debug, what are the different types of errors we discussed. Like bug is nothing but what? Type of error in a program is known as what? Bug. Debugging is nothing but what? Removing or rectifying, resolving errors from a program is called what? Debugging. Generally here occurs what type of errors? Like compile time errors, linking errors, and runtime errors. Compile time errors, these are given by the what? Compiler, and prevent the program for what? Running. Generally compiler generating these errors due to what? Like bad syntax and semantics of the particular program. Linking errors, these are given by the linker or at a runtime and ends the program. The linker can also detect and report errors. Okay, runtime errors, these are given by the operating system. Like OS, operating system is responsible to write generating what? Runtime errors. See, this is the execution flow of C language. We are writing the source program or source code. Generally we are instructing in the form of what? High level language based on the standard code, ASCII standard code, Unicode, like that. But in C language we are following what? ASCII standard code. And generally English instructions we are going to be writing. Always save the application with extension what? File name dot C language. These program cannot execute it directly, right? It has some several steps that called execution flow of what? C language. Why? Because machine always understands object code, but we return the instruction what? High level programming, like high level language like English. Then here some steps involved. Preprocessor. See, these preprocessor, it is a separate program invoked by the compiler as the first part of what? Translation. The preprocessor handles what? Directives for source file inclusion, what? Preprocessor like hash include, macro definitions like hash define, and condition inclusions like hash if. The language of preprocessor directives is agnostic to the grammar of C, so the C processor can also be used independently to process other type of files. Generally it consists what? All C commands are replaced with what? Single spaces. Predefined macro names are replaced with their expansions. Like it's going to be do some job in the pre-processing, generating what? Expanded source code. With extension, file extension is what? Dot I. Compiler is responsible to load this expanded source code. Compiler checks the syntax and semantics of the particular programming. After that, if it is error free, then it's going to be generate assembly code. If it is any bad syntaxes or semantics of the program, compiler immediately throws an error. This error is called compile time error. Compiler is responsible to generate what? Compile time error. See, once error is free, until unless error free, you cannot process next step. Compilation error is free, then only it converts what? Converting expanded source code into what? Assembly code. It's going to be generate intermediary code with extension what? File extension dot s. Here assembler is responsible to load this assembly code and it's generating what? Object code. Assembler is responsible to load assembly code and generating what? Object code with extension what? Dot obj. I told you C++ generally becomes what? Platform dependent due to this what? Assembly code, because this assembler is responsible to converting this assembly code into what? Object code, machine understandable code. Assembly level language, normally these second generation languages are what? Machine dependent, that depend about particular architecture, operating system instruction. That code you cannot run in the different operating system, because every operating system consists its own environment and hardware and their related instructions. Okay, this object code is you cannot run in the different operating system. This solution is provided by what? Next level languages like Java. Those are all become what? Platform independent, because that has separate runtime environment. But the C++ applications have only one runtime environment directly running in what? Operating system. All these instructions are running directly in what? Operating system. For that sake, that operating system dependency instructions are embedded in what? Object code. But if you go with the Java has separate runtime environment. Okay, there it won't generate any kind of system dependency code while generating object code. That is the difference between like a C++ and Java for what? Execution flow. Fine. Here once object code is generated, machine understandable code is ready, then linker is load this object code and also linking with several C standard libraries and other object files, and it going to be generating what executable code with extension what .exe. Once executable code is generated, generally it is in what secondary storage device, this file information. Loader loads that secondary storage file information to what main memory, then start for providing what execution. Last we make it what output. See, this is the complete steps involved for what compilation and execution process of what C language. So in this session we had discussed simple C programs with the examples like hello.c and demo.c. Like that, not only these two examples, whatever the examples we are going to be writing and developing applications using C, then the execution flow includes all these steps. Okay, the steps involved into what, like source code. Source code is what high level instructions code, like user understandable instructions code. Generally we are going to be writing in the high level instructions only in the C language with the help of what some editors and IDE. IDE stands for integrated development environments. Okay, next session I will explain how to download and how to install and how to write program and how to compile and execute with the help of what IDEs. Normally we can call it a C source code. Once writing the C source code, preprocessor is responsible to convert that source code into what expanded code or preprocessed code. Then compiler loads that preprocessed code or expanded source code. Then it's going to be checking the syntax and semantics errors. If it is everything is clear, then it's going to be generating what assembly code. Assembler is a responsible to load this assembly code and generating what object code. This object code is what platform dependent code. You cannot carry, you cannot run in the different platforms, but this object code is understood by what machine understandable code. That file consists machine understandable code. The linker or link editor is responsible to load that object code and several libraries and other object modules, and it's going to be generating what executable code. Once executable code is generated, that code normally stores in the secondary storage area. That file is going to be loaded to the main memory. This job is done by what loader. This stage is active while running or executing the program. Loader is responsible to load that file, executable code file, and process it for what execution. So once execution is done, we may get what resultant output. Processor is responsible to like load that execution file and generating what resultant output. So in this session we have discussed in detail about all the terminologies involved into the basic C programs, including execution flow of C programs. Okay, that's it for today's session. Thank you for watching my videos. Thank you all.